Good morning and welcome to day 27 of our study. We are in Mark's Gospel, chapter 7, verses 1 through 23. I love the old story of the guy who owned a factory. Very delicate piece of machinery broke down, so he called a repairman. The repairman came in, spent just a couple minutes looking at the machine, took out a very fine precision hammer and tapped the machine in just the right spot, and it was working again. That was all fine and good until the repairman sent his bill. It was $1,000. And the owner of the company complained, saying, "You were just here for a couple minutes and all you did was tap it with a little hammer. That's $1,000." So the repairman sent an itemized bill. And it was broken down this way: $1 for labor, $999 for knowing exactly where to tap your machine. It was important that he knew where to tap. This passage that we're going to look at today is an important passage. And the reason it's important, it affects everything, but we have to understand why it's important. What's it really saying? So we're going to be in Mark's Gospel, chapter 7, starting in verse 1. In fact, let's look at the first 5 verses there. This is again Jesus and the Pharisees. There's an argument, but what's going on in this argument matters. The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus and saw some of his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And they observe many other traditions, such as the washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. So the Pharisees and teachers of the law asked Jesus, "Why don't your disciples live according to the traditions of the elders instead of eating their food with defiled hands?" See, the Pharisees had found yet another thing that Jesus was doing wrong. He wasn't having his disciples wash their hands the right way. They were washing their hands just not the right way. See, the Pharisees and the rabbis had traditions. God's law said, "Wash your hands." Okay, but they decided, here's how you wash your hands. You have to start with the right one. You pour this way, and then you pour this way, and then this way, and then you go to the left hand. It was a ritual, and it had to be done exactly right. And Jesus wasn't teaching his disciples to honor their traditions. Now, there is nothing wrong with traditions. We have our traditions. The problem is when those traditions start becoming more important than God's command. You see, every church has traditions: how we do music, how we dress, just how we run things. Those are traditions. And there's nothing wrong with them unless we start saying you can't be a real Christian unless you keep our tradition. And that's what was going on here. So Jesus answers them in verse 6. He replied, "Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites, as it is written, 'These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules.' You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to human traditions." This was actually important. This whole argument, and we're not going to get into, you can read the rest of it, but there's arguments over what kind of food you're allowed to eat. There's arguments over all this minutia, this nonsense, how you keep the law. But here's the bottom line. Jesus was looking for a certain kind of heart to follow him. Jesus was looking for a certain kind of person, and these Pharisees did not have it. I'm going to skip all the way down to verse 20. He went on, "What comes out of a person is what defiles him." What comes out of them? You see, the Pharisees were saying it's what goes into you that defiles you. If you eat with unwashed hands, you're not right with God. If you eat the wrong food, you're not right with God. Jesus says it's what comes out of a person that defiles them. Verse 21, "For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come: sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, cheering for the Denver Broncos, and folly. All of these evils come from inside and defile a person." You see, Jesus knew that. It's the heart that matters. Jesus wants a certain kind of heart. And the bottom line here is that Jesus was saying, it's not whether you eat pork, it's not whether you eat or wash your hands the right way. You can still be right with God. You have to have the right kind of heart. I believe there's two kinds of Christians. I'm going to give you these two categories of Christians. And as I do, I want you to tell me which one you are. Number one are librarians. Librarians, well, let me give you the second one too. You can either be a librarian Christian or a sales rep. Now, what's the difference? Well, librarians really only let you know what you're doing wrong. If you're making too much noise in a library, there's a librarian going, shh. I've been shushed before in libraries. If you're talking too loud, if you're not getting your books back on time, if you didn't put your book back on the shelf where it belongs, you're going to hear from a librarian. And some Christians are librarians. Their spiritual gift is telling other people what they're doing wrong. That's what the Pharisees were. That's not what Jesus was looking for. Jesus was looking for sales reps. Now, what's a sales rep? It's somebody who's trying to make a sale. And if you're trying to make a sale, how do you treat people? Do you treat them the way librarians treat people? Here's the thing, and here's what I really want you to understand. Your role as a Christian will determine your behavior as a Christian. Let me say it this way. How you see yourself as a Christian, whether you see yourself as a librarian or whether you see yourself as a sales rep, is going to determine how you act as a Christian. If you think your role is to show where others are wrong and to show how your theology is correct and theirs isn't, and your role is to show them how their actions are wrong, why I'm right and you're wrong. If that's your role, you are a librarian, and you will spend your time serving God by being angry, by being irritated with other Christians, by getting annoyed with how people think and act and vote. Election year is coming up, all kinds of opportunities to get annoyed here. You're always going to see yourself as wronged, and you're not going to be a lot of fun to hang around. And you're not going to draw very many people to the fellowship of Jesus. But if you see your role as a sales rep, your behavior is going to be very different. Jesus never told his disciples, go into all the world and tell people what they're doing wrong and why they don't measure up to you. He never said, go into other churches and tell them why their theology is wrong. Guess what? People don't like to be criticized. I know that might sound earth-shaking, but people don't. This doesn't mean that we just overlook sin. But we have to understand, who are we? Are we librarians or are we sales reps? Because if we're sales reps, we are trying to bring people to the Lord where they can get their life changed. If we're librarians, all we're doing is saying you're doing it wrong. We need to be able to respond to people with love and respect. Frankly, there are too many angry Christians today. We get angry at other Christians. We get angry at non-Christians, at what they do and say and think and how they live. And then we get angry at other Christians because they don't measure up to us and they're not worshiping the way we should or believing what we should or using the right Bible like we do. And all that anger makes you absolutely useless when it comes to being light in the world. See, these Pharisees following Jesus around, just looking for any opportunity to criticize. You're not washing your hands right. What kind of hearts did they have? They were bitter, they were angry, they were librarians. If you go out of your way looking for something that's wrong, you're going to find it. But what does that really say about you? What we need are more sales reps. They're not so critical. They don't overlook sin, but they're not so critical. They try to win people over. They try to show people love. They show people why you need my product, why you need Jesus, and how it can change your life. They do it with respect. They do it with love. They have the kinds of hearts that God can use. And if you're thinking, Pastor Chris, you're completely wrong on this. You're completely wrong. It's our job to point out where people are wrong. If you think that, that's fine. My only question to you is, what time does the library close? Have a great day. Stay positive. Be sales reps. And I'll see you tomorrow.